everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. If you've been listening to the show for a while now, or following the spooky for any time at all, you've probably noticed there are various ways to experience the paranormal and unexplained. However, the experience of touch really unsettles me. Something about the veil being lifted so high that actual physical contact can be made is, well, it's horrifying. We talk about feelings a lot, the feeling of being watched, etc. And sometimes we dismiss these feelings. We make excuses for the sounds, for the visuals. But how exactly does one dismiss literal contact? And even more, how does one get rid of something like that? Thankfully, I've never personally had to answer that question. On the other hand, many others have had no choice but to contemplate that exact question. And tonight, we'll hear those experiences for ourselves. So, let's get started, shall we? I talked to two friends about weird things that have happened to us, and after a while, they hesitantly relayed this story with the expectation I would call them crazy. They work in the social field, have no mental illness, are near their 30s, and are generally not into these kind of events, nor spiritual or esoteric type stuff. They never called themselves time travelers, but what do you call it? It happened in a small town in the middle of Germany last summer. They were eating Grütze in the town center in the middle of the day. Suddenly, they had clothes on that would date them back to the mid-late 19th century. They were still in the same spot, but everything looked 19th century. With people riding horse-drawn carriage, women with big hats with decorations and petticoat-type dresses in washed-out pink tones. The street and marketplace were cobblestone. This event only lasted a few seconds, according to them, and nothing like this ever happened before or again. They described no weird feeling, just a flash. They were there and back. It wasn't a big, flashy story, but that's the reason I was intrigued by it. I hope you have some ideas of what happened or explanations that can clarify what happened. Are there any other similar experiences? Just got back from visiting Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. Stayed at the Best Western next to Cemetery Ridge. My room actually looked out onto the ridge. On the first night, I woke up at 5 a.m., looked out the window at the hill. It was a clear night without a moon, so the hill was completely dark. All I could see was the outline of the ridge. I stared at the ridge tree line for about 2 minutes, not knowing what I was looking for and just thinking about the battle there. For some reason, I started thinking about, what if I saw a ghost or an orb? And at that very moment, a bright, round, white ball of light came on in the tree line at the ridge of the hill. It didn't look like a flashlight, since it didn't have a beam or variate in any way that it moved. It was about the size of a softball, I imagine, since I was about 150 yards away. It started moving right to left along the tree line, and then sped off across the hill towards the Angel, if you know that location on Cemetery Ridge. The whole thing lasted about 45 seconds, and as it was happening, I wanted to run over and grab my phone to take pictures or video, but I didn't want to miss anything. I was also trying to figure out what it was. Once it was gone, there was nothing, nobody on the ridge, from what I could see. So I got my phone and recorded about 10 minutes while watching for it to come back. Unfortunately, nothing appeared, and the daylight was starting to break, so I could start making out the actual trees, a few statues and monuments on the ridge. Needless to say, I couldn't get back to sleep. I just wanted to add that the movement of the light from right to left, it was erratic, and when it sped off, it was extremely fast, and it left a trace of light behind it. In my opinion, nobody could have run that fast, and there's no indication of motorcycles, bikes, or a car. The night that changed everything for me began like any other night. I was visiting my grandparents and sleeping in my grandmother's bed, as I always did. However, something strange and frightening happened that I couldn't explain. I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling a strange tickling sensation on the back of my neck. I tried to swat away whatever was bothering me, but the feeling persisted. That's when I turned around and saw it. A pale, human hand with long, sharp black nails. It was attached to a figure wearing a monk's robe, and everything beyond the hand was just an unnatural blackness. As I watched, the hand reached out and touched me, and a voice whispered in a calm but dark tone, "Follow me. Where we will go, it is beautiful." Despite feeling scared, I somehow remained calm and replied, "No, I don't want to." But the figure was persistent, responded with a more forceful voice, "Believe me, you want to come with me." And that's when I screamed, turned to my grandmother, who was dazed and claimed that I was dreaming. But the encounters didn't stop there. On another occasion, I was in bed. My mom had just left the room with the light still on. When I turned back to the door, I saw a figure made out of pure blackness, with bright green glowing eyes. I called out to my grandmother, but there was no answer. I turned away and back, but the figure was still there. And then suddenly, it was gone. It wasn't until 12 years later that I would hear a similar story from my stepfather. He told me that he had been up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom when a shadowy figure with glowing green eyes had touched him. He even had a red handprint on his shoulder as proof. He had no knowledge of my experiences, which made it more eerie. To this day, I still don't know what I encountered and why, but I do know that those experiences left an indelible mark on me, and I'll never forget them. I can't explain what I experienced outside of Penn Station in New York City. 2 years ago, my wife and 2 daughters took the PATH train from New Jersey to Manhattan. After exiting the station, we stood on the sidewalk as I tried to hail a cab. It was a bright, sunny day without a cloud in the sky. I stepped off the curb with my family standing behind me, and I had my right hand extended to get the cab's attention when I saw a tall, black shadow out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a man with a large brimmed hat and a long coat. It looked like he was standing extremely close behind my family. So close that it bothered me. Since we were in the city, there's no telling what his intentions were. That's when I turned to get a better look at him. But, and only for a split second, I saw a faceless black shadow and scared the hell out of me. It happened so fast I did a double take, but it was already gone. I made a surprised remark, and my family watched with concerned expressions as I looked around for anyone that I could have mistaken for what I saw. I looked at the reflections in the building windows just to make sure it wasn't a shadow from across the street, but I didn't see anything before we drove away in the cab. I was freaked out and worried about my vision. I thought it might have been caused by a blind spot. I even considered a hallucination, worried that it wouldn't go away. Ultimately, I decided not to tell my wife, and I waited to see if it would happen again. Thankfully, it didn't. I eventually did tell my wife. She thought that it was interesting, but she didn't pay much attention to it. A few weeks after we got home, I Googled Hat Man, not even knowing it was a thing. I was shocked to see others reporting so many similar experiences. That was over 2 years ago, and thankfully, I still haven't seen anything else like that. I wanted to share an experience that happened in my home last Thanksgiving. For the last 20 years, I've been living in an octagon house. It was built in 1855. I've experienced many things over the years. The last major event happened as my family and I sat down for Thanksgiving dinner at 4. Shortly after everyone was seated, I clearly heard footsteps on the second floor, directly above the kitchen. The steps continued across the room, then down the stairs, directly outside the open kitchen doorway. Then they began coming towards me from behind, but it all happened so fast that I didn't even look back. I could actually feel the thumping on the floorboards as the footsteps approached. Before I could say anything, my youngest daughter looked under the table, accused me of making the noise. I firmly denied this, confirmed she was hearing and feeling the same thing too. It was very creepy, and it was also strange that my younger daughter was the only other one to experience it. My other daughter and wife didn't have a clue what we were talking about. That's how it is with all the weird stuff in our house. I guess we're more sensitive to these things than they are. Yet another creepy occurrence in my octagon home, built circa 1855. This time, my daughter was sleeping in our family room on our pull-out couch. It was 2:30 a.m. I woke up needing to go to the bathroom, which is off the family room. As I was in the bathroom, I heard my daughter jump out of bed, hurry, and run into the bedroom where my wife was. She was terrified, said that she had a bad dream. She quickly fell asleep in my room, and I returned from the bathroom. As I was getting ready to fall back asleep, my dog was going crazy and snorting like she was warning someone or something to stay away, or I see you. I got out of bed, went back into the family room where my daughter was sleeping, found my dog on the bed, looking at the corner of the room like it was interacting with something. I told her to quiet down. She followed me into my room and went to sleep on the floor, only after walking back and forth to the family room a few more times. In the morning, I asked my daughter what scared her so much. She said that she had a scary dream that there were ghosts in the room. I was talking about the dog going crazy, about something in the corner of the room. My daughter said that that's where someone was standing in her dream. This, by the way, is the same room where I saw a shadow person separately at night. I never told her about my experience as to not scare her, but I don't like sleeping in that room, and I always have a light on, even at night. I've had 2 dreams in my life that weren't regular dreams. This was about 20 years ago while visiting the Gettysburg battlefield. My girlfriend and I were staying at a Holiday Inn adjacent to the battlefield. I had a very young soldier come to me in my dream. He said his name and age, which I can't remember, and that he had died on the hotel grounds. He was extremely sad that people didn't know he lost his life there. His sorrow was overwhelming. His emotions were so intense that I could physically feel them. It felt like he was giving me a message. He wanted me to know how much of his life he missed out on. When I woke up, I was completely drained, and it shocked me to my core. The second time happened the night after my mother died, 6 years ago. It was very similar to the first experience, but much more personal. My mother had died of cancer after a painful battle. We were very close. I took her to every chemotherapy appointment. I never saw my mother's face in the dream, but I felt her presence and connection. She just kept repeating, "I'm happy now. I'm happy now," over and over, while I cried. I woke up with tears streaming down my cheeks. It was so intense, kind of spooky, since I'm so sure it really happened. It also made me feel better, too. So, maybe that was her goal. Eight years ago, I was a field technician for one of America's largest cellular carriers. Part of my job was being on call after hours for 1 week a month. And this year, that included a call on Halloween night. As is often the case, it happened just as I was getting ready for bed at midnight. I told my wife that the only place I wouldn't want to go was a particular old church, built in the 1820s. It was an old, wooden, colonial New England church that had at least one grave inside the chapel, which belonged to the original minister. Our cellular equipment was located in a small room inside the steeple, just below the bell, and it was locked with a combination that only our employees knew. Obviously, that's where I had to go. There was a radio down, and they wanted me there fast. To put it into perspective, there were about 2,000 cell sites that I was on call for, but I had to go to the old church. My heart dropped as I asked what they thought the issue was, but they'd never seen this happen with someone on site. The radio had set itself into local mode, which is a function that can only be done by pushing a physical button on location. It's not possible via remote access. I calmly said that I would take care of it and hung up. Needless to say, I stayed in bed, waited an hour, and called back to inform them the key was missing. I told them the issue would need to be fixed in the morning. There was no way I was going out there to see who or what tampered with the equipment. Sure enough, in the morning, the radio was on. All I had to do was push the button to take it out of local mode. When I was about 5 and my sister was about 3, we were staying at a Motel 6 that had an outdoor pool. My sister and I were playing in it with our mom. My dad was and still is a preacher, and he was busy at one of the tables outside working on a sermon. A man at the pool noticed the Bible and used it as an opportunity to ask my dad for counsel. My dad said that he would be happy to sit and talk with him. Not too long before that, my mom was getting my sister and I out of the pool and was going to take us up to the room to get us bathed and cleaned up for dinner. The man was like, "Well, I'm not comfortable talking out here. Let's go to your room." My dad said, "Sorry, but no, that's not an option." The guy was like, "You're a pastor. It's your responsibility to make me feel at ease so that I can do some real healing." My dad said again, "Not possible. But I can meet you at the cafe, buy you a cup of coffee. We can have a good talk." The man started getting frustrated and pushy, saying that the only way he was comfortable talking was in my dad's room. My dad said, "Sorry, good luck to you. It's not going to happen." Eventually, the guy gave up and left, but my dad said that he was pretty sure that the man was trying to get into our room to do bad things to our family. We ended up leaving shortly after that. Growing up, my family used to share a cabin in the woods. It was our family's version of camping, I guess. We don't use it anymore, but for the time that we did, I found it pretty terrifying. There was something about the upstairs bathroom. I never wanted to be in there too long, and really didn't want to be in there by myself. I'd always choose to brush my teeth when my cousins were and all that stuff. But the worst part was the room that I shared with my little brother. 2 twin beds on opposite sides of the room. I was probably 9 or 10 at this time. I wasn't openly afraid of the dark because I had a little brother, but I was afraid of the dark. But this night, I remember waking up. It felt like something pulled my hair. Jolting awake, I assumed it was just a dream. But as I sat up, I felt my head yank back down towards the pillow, like something had grabbed my hair. Feeling the back of my head, there was nothing. I ran across the room, jumped into my little brother's bed, and slept under the covers. Well, I don't know if you'd call it sleeping, but I did something until it was light. I never told anyone about it, not until years later. Apparently everyone had some sort of strange experience there, one time or another. Glad this is the only one that really sticks out in my memory. My girlfriend and I live in an apartment complex at the edge of our small town in Illinois. Right next to us is a lively wooded area full of coyotes, deer, and lots of birds. Last night at 3 a.m., she went outside to grab a case of water from our car. She heard a girl's voice say, "Hello?" from the woods. She couldn't see, but she replied back with her own confused, "Hello?" Next, the voice asked, "Can somebody help me?" And it gave her the chills, so she ran back inside. Right before she entered the house, she heard it again, only this time it was closer, and it didn't sound like a girl's voice anymore.
"Can somebody help me?"
It didn't even sound real. After having time to think it over, she thought the girl's voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. I fully believe her because in the 2 years we've lived here, we've never talked about anything like this. Plus, I saw the shock on her face when she rushed inside. She was also out of breath. I thought she'd seen or heard a gunshot or something. She thinks it was a skinwalker. What do you think? I also read that you're not supposed to interact with it or share your encounter with anyone. Hopefully it'll be okay just to share this one instance if that's really what it is. I've owned my house for about 18 years, and I've recently experienced some things that I can't explain. I'm not a person who necessarily believes in ghosts, so I'm not jumping to any conclusions or trying to sell the house just yet. 6 months ago, my wife and I were having issues with our 10-year-old daughter not sleeping in her bed. Every night, she would run into our room and climb into bed with us. One night, she ran in and took up all the room and the blankets, so I got up and I slept in her bed. By 3, I was sleeping on my side and facing the bedroom door when I opened my eyes. Right in front of me was a dark shadow of a short person or child, and it was looking at me. It has no features at all. It was just a black, cloudy form. I didn't move or blink for several seconds until it simply faded away. Surprisingly, I didn't jump out of bed or anything like that. Instead, I rolled onto my back and wondered if I'd really just seen that. After laying there for a couple of minutes, I finally started getting scared and returned to my own bedroom, where I eventually went back to sleep. That morning, I told my wife, but didn't want to scare our daughter. I've since tried to write this off as sleep paralysis, but deep down, I know I was awake. Then, last week, my family and I were out for dinner and the subject of ghosts came up. I asked my daughter if she'd ever experienced anything she couldn't explain. And she said that she once woke up to see a shadow girl floating near her door. I still didn't tell her what I saw, but my wife and I locked eyes. And then she said that we were both crazy. There have been other things happening with our electronics, like phones randomly playing videos in the middle of the night, the TV changing channels. But thankfully, no more shadow people. My dog has also been barking and growling at things in adjacent rooms when nobody's in there. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode, but thanks for joining me, and don't forget to tune in every Friday for a brand new episode. And don't miss my other weekly uploads every Sunday and Wednesday. And we've got more deep sleep videos coming your way. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, and talk to me in the comments. I want to thank those who shared their stories, and a big thanks to all of you for listening. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons whom I appreciate so very much. Tracy S, Tamara K, Monica L, ZoeWatt, Chelle B, Donald C, Marion T, Rat Girl, Alisha S, Erin G, Nikki H, Mr. Revenant, Naz K, Brendon G, Paul T, Nicholas C, Lissane, Arlene F, and Adrienne. If you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/thedarkesthouryt. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Thanks everyone, and stay spooky.